When robots can fold laundry, then I'll be impressed.
Suppose that they get a consciousness, they might hate this task just as much as humans hate this task.
No, AI is going to take all of our jobs. The very least it could do is deal with my recycling.
Yeah. Until the robots get upset with doing our chores.
Yeah.
This is Hard Reset, a series about rebuilding our world from scratch.
Hello and welcome to the Hard Reset podcast. I'm Nick Tucker. I'm here with Taylor Hamilton.
Hi.
We're the co-creators of Hard Reset, which is a show on Freethink about how we would rebuild the world from scratch. We're joined today by Rob Chapman-Smith.
Hi, I'm the editor-in-chief of Freethink.
And Toby Morishanu.
Hi, I'm a community manager at Freethink.
So for this episode, we're going to be talking about a company that uses AI and robotics to improve the way that we sort out recycling and is really creating a new era for how we conserve our resources.
So why do you think that this is a hard reset?
I'll be honest, I think it's actually an incremental change. But I think that, I know.
Bad, Nick.
Welcome
I
to
think
the
it's an
incremental
incremental
change podcast. We talk about very small increments.
But I think the technology allows us to start imagining a hard reset, which is really what the show's about. That the folks at AMP have developed this algorithm for looking at scanning trash, using vision systems to identify different components, sort it out with the robot. And that's cool. And that's a huge improvement from what we have been doing, which is having humans do that.
Right.
And humans, A, not as fast as robots. B, it's dangerous for them. And then C, it's just hard to find people who want to do that work.
Right.
And what I think this allows us to start imagining is, can we actually start to creep towards a circular economy where we, A, design products for recycling, and B, actually start to implement that. A lot of people might not realize how recycling works. I've heard people who have sort of like a very utopian vision of what recycling centers are like. That like, oh, just, your stuff goes in and comes out as perfect, pure commodities. Or the opposite, where it's like, they just throw it in a landfill anyway, so why should I bother? And everywhere in between. But it sort of clusters on those two ends of the spectrum. And the reality is a lot messier.
What's the reality? Like, how does most recycling happen? Like, what actually gets recycled?
Yeah. So at the recycling center, your stuff is dumped out and into these giant piles, and people start to sort of generally sort through it. The metals are pulled out through either a variety of techniques. Then there's the glassware and the paper, and these all kind of get sorted into these things of various levels of purity. And the stuff that's cleanest and purest is obviously more valuable than the stuff that's more contaminated. And it's messy, it's time consuming, and a lot of stuff that's just problematic, they're not going to bother with, and it does wind up in a landfill. But if your stuff is clean and relatively in good shape, it will definitely get recycled.
Where do I put my pizza box? This is the eternal question. Pizza box, where do I put that?
So compost is really great for a lot of these things. So like soiled cardboard with food material on it is great for compost. The place we went to film this up in Napa, California, is also a huge composting center. It was interesting going to film there because it actually has this overpowering smell that is not actually entirely unpleasant.
Is that how people describe you?
Here.
Yeah, exactly. Not entirely unpleasant. It smells like fresh dirt with a lot of wine in it.
Okay.
Because they do actually compost a lot of old grapes from the wine industry in Napa. And so it has this really strong odor.
Terroir, if you...
Yeah, exactly. And they make dirt there. So like they take food scraps, old winery scraps from their grapes and things like that, the stuff from our compost bins at home, and that all gets turned into dirt. They have this process where they're creating this really great soil. So you should definitely be recycling your food material by composting it. But this actual technology is really focused on how do you sort out the plastic bottles from the different types of glass and metal things. And it's kind of incredible technology.
The stat from the video is that they're able to recycle 99% of the things that come through their doors now.
Right.
That's a big number.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so without AI, without robots, what is that number?
I mean, it's all over the place. With enough time and passes, you could get that to 99% with human workers doing that sorting. But can you get enough human workers to do it? And can you then run the unsorted material across the conveyor belt that many times that it can all be sorted? That's the problem. There's just not enough labor to do these sorts of things. And humans are going to miss a lot of things and make mistakes. And these machines actually tend to be more accurate and faster than humans. So it's an easy sell in terms of fixing the labor shortage problem. The other thing that's really important here is that because it's a robot doing this sort of sorting, it can be more precise about the chemistries. There's this whole hidden language of recycling that I don't think people understand. Like if you look at your milk jug, it has a number 2 or number 3 with a recycling.
Oh, so annoying. Yes.
Yeah. So all those sort of indicate different all those indicate different chemistries, what type of plastic it is and how it needs to be recycled and sorted with like plastics. And beyond just making sure you have it in the right category, you can even start to be more precise. You can do things like, hey, this yogurt container has the same plastic as this one with the same kind of dyes. And when that's even closer in composition, those can be recycled even more purely. So for me, that's great. And that's a huge improvement. And I think that's what makes this a great, promising technology. What I think would get us to a full hard reset is when we say, hey, not just 90% of what comes to the recycling center, but 99% of our garbage altogether. Because that 99% is not all the stuff in your black bin. That goes to a completely different waste processing center. That goes straight to a landfill typically. So I think if we can start to make the packaging in such a way that it encourages more people to sort it out to the right bin and get it recycled properly, then we're in a much better place.
Cool.
So we sometimes do this at the end, but how do people get involved? But I'm curious, what level of preparation do you put into your own recycling? Because I always have to deal with it. Like, should I wash out this cheap piece of plastic and put it in the recycling bin, or is that too much energy and not worth the time? So what?
I've heard mixed things about this.
Yeah.
So I've heard both from very reliable sources, both to wash and dry your recycling. And then I've heard people say you don't really need to do that. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, you probably don't need to do it as long as your, recycling is great. That by itself it puts you a step ahead.
I've heard mostly to the contrary. I think this is called wish cycling, when something is you're like hoping that it will recycle, even though it has all these like food and different kinds of like metals and plastics like fused together and stuff. And you're just like, I hope somebody deals with that well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And one of the sections at the recycling center when we were walking around that they showed us was this section where they have all the contaminated glass, where there's glass stuff where it's just covered with mayonnaise and whatever else is there. And there's just a storm cloud of seagulls circling slowly above it as they come down. And,
it's my nightmare.
Yeah, nibble off the food refuse off of it. But eventually even that does get recycled. It's a lower quality.
Washed.
Yeah.
Wash it first.
Right.
Yeah. I just put it into the mayonnaise bin. Separate the mayonnaise.
I mean,
recycled mayonnaise is, you know what? You may have already eaten some recycled mayonnaise. Sorry.
I recycle. I believe in recycling. It's weird when I go to Tennessee, where my wife is from, and like you can't really recycle glass. Like you have to take it and like drive the glass to a special place. Like there's places where you don't recycle and you're like throwing out this thing that feels really expensive. And it feels odd. On the other side, I went to a cafe the other day, and their like dumping station was like 7 different kinds of bins. It was like liquids go here, foods go here, this kind of waste go here. I was like, I'm so confused. I don't just what do I do with this?
Yeah. Well, I feel like there needs to be some education more around recycling, or we just simplify it.
No. I have a huge problem with this. Well, I don't think it should be put on the consumer. Like,
it's either we educate, like deliberately, or we simplify the process. And I wonder if this AI can help us just simplify the process.
No, yes. AI is going to take all of our jobs. The very least it could do is deal with my recycling a little bit.
Yeah. Until the robots get upset with doing our chores.
Yeah. I mean, I think that I think Penn and Teller did a great episode of their show Bullshit, where they broke down the recycling thing as like, hey, what if we gave you a bin for your compost and your recycling and your garbage, and for your toilet paper, and one for semi-soiled foods, and one for plastics that's this, and one for glass that's this, and like, and someone has 8 bins, and it's like, are you actually going to do that? No, of course not. And I agree. Like the ideal situation is not people sort out their trash.
Right.
Because people's time is more valuable than robots' time. Mm-hmm. The ideal situation is people dispose of their trash in a way that a robot can then do all that sorting for you.
Yeah, it's interesting for me because I live in an apartment building. And so all of my, like, regardless of how diligent I am with my recycling, it all gets dumped in one giant thing anyway.
Yeah.
And so I actually wonder about like AMP Robotics for apartment buildings. Like, it's a giant mess. No, not everybody's like careful with the recycling that they're putting in the same stream as mine. Like, I wash out all my cans and bottles and things like that. But my recycling,
time, man. You got time.
yeah.
I rinse out all my trash, all my recycling, especially because I don't want it to stink up.
Yes.
My place.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm usually rinsing out the can of tomato sauce and rinsing out the mayonnaise jar or whatever. So that
Then what about the water? What about the waterways? I'm
Shake it
sure
out.
someone put that in the comments.
I mean, it's all trade-offs, right?
Well, I do have a serious question, which is, what about the plastic, the plastic lighters? Like when you're tying those up and you're putting those into the recycling.
Oh, I don't use plastic liners in my truck.
They make recyclable plastic liners. That's what I have.
But when this goes to the recycling facility, who's tearing those apart? Like how?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there are some people who do that. There are times when
Humans
do that. There are places where they shred it and things like that. They encourage you not to have a lot of plastic films in your recycling bin. And one of the things that you can see sort of floating around is like the shreds of these.
It's like American Beauty.
Yeah, exactly. Only not beautiful at all. It's just like shreds of plastic in the air. You're like, oh, it's not dancing. It's just a pollutant. So the very thin plastic films get shredded and become a huge problem. They get caught in the machinery. They cause a lot of problems for them, which is why it's hard to recycle thin plastic films. Not because the chemistry is bad, but because it gets shredded and by all the machines, it just clogs up the works.
Right.
So you can theoretically recycle a lot of plastic films, and some recycling centers will take them because they're equipped for it, but you have to be kind of careful. Some recycling centers are just not equipped for it.
Got it.
But more and more are. And I think, again, it comes down to sorting and having things handled in the proper way. And most people don't do that right. Most people shouldn't have to do a whole lot of extra effort, especially if we can take that work and hand it to machines, which are going to do it better anyway.
What is the innovation that allowed this to come to fruition?
Yeah, so this one specifically, AI vision systems, and specifically GPUs. Just the incredible drop in the price of GPUs and that rise in efficiency has made it so much easier for people to get the processing bandwidth they need to run very fast AI vision systems. I mean, we've had machine learning algorithms for decades, but they're just so slow and clunky, and there's no point in having a robot that sorts through your garbage if that robot is going to be, prohibitively expensive and slower than a human. Right. And now it's neither of those things. Now it's way cheaper and faster.
There's something funny about a recycling robot that requires so much power usage that it like destroys the purpose of recycling.
I'm curious as to, in terms of like them training the AI, like how many plastic bottles do they have to show it before it recognizes the difference between a plastic bottle and a glass bottle, for example?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know the exact quantity, but that is probably one of their biggest assets at the company is this data set. And they did a lot of dumpster diving. Apparently it's not actually super simple to just get a lot of trash. You have to jump through a few hoops. But now, now they have a good waste stream where they can pull from, run machine learning models on waste streams from different places and use that to improve that model. And then, of course, all the machines they have out now working in these recycling centers are adding to that learning model. So they're just getting better and better all the time, which is cool.
Well, one thing that seems like a good opportunity here is we're talking about, putting in more energy than it's worth, which has actually really been a problem with recycling, where it's like to turn it into something useful, you have to put in more fuel essentially.
Right.
But now that we're switching to things like solar, and you have the issue of the asynchronous, how solar like peaks in the middle of the day when you don't need the most power. But this is something that can benefit from that asynchronous. Is asynchronous the right word? It sounds smart, so I'm going to stick with it.
Someone comment on whether he's using it correctly.
It can happen asynchronously so that like you can, keep running it. Like you were saying, humans, if you kept running it, would do better and better. Well, you can have these machines keep running it as much as you want while you have cheap power during the day.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And essentially, the more that you run these things through these systems, the more pure and refined your trash stream gets, your recycling stream. And they do not like it when you call it trash. They do like it when you call it recycling. What comes out of the back of a recycling truck is pretty worthless. It's trash.
This is not trash. It's recycling.
Really?
Yeah. I don't think they were that offended, but they, sort of playfully made that point.
Gotcha.
So to me,
trash is another man's recycling.
one man's trash is the waste facilities recycling.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like I should be spooling a glass of wine.
Yeah.
That smells like a garbage dump.
One thing I was curious about in terms of watching it was where is Amazon in all of this? And when I say that, I mean, they're spending a lot of money making plastic, packaging as well as the brown boxes.
Yeah.
That go there. And I've noticed that they've gotten thinner and thinner over the years because someone probably did some calculation on like how much money they would save if they did that. But where are they in terms of this? It seems like if each of those things cost, I don't know, 10 cents to ship and they can get that down to 5 cents to ship. It's actually probably a fairly big deal for some, company like that that's shipping so many things per day.
Yeah, absolutely. So the price of cardboard as a recycling commodity is pretty high right now. There's a lot of people who are desperate to get cardboard. So cardboard's in demand. I think
Is this like a Simpsons episode?
No, but I mean, there's definitely there's huge demand for it, and part of it is because of there's so much shipping happening and things like that. One of the things that Amazon has done that I think is very interesting is they have these like easy to open packaging for things. Like if you buy a certain product, you might have I'm going to click this option to get the easy to open package, where they'll work with the manufacturer to have just a very simple cardboard package instead of the clamshell or whatever
Blister pack or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. That you might have at the shelf at Target. Instead, they just have it kind of ready to go. So you open the package and it's gone. And so there's less packaging involved. And a lot of those are also just more inherently recyclable. When we were speaking with the folks at AMP, one of the problems that happens here is that a great product design isn't always a great recycling design. So think about the box of pasta you buy at the grocery store. It's like 90% cardboard, and there's a little window with a plastic film there that lets you see inside and go, there's pasta inside that box.
Yummy, yummy, yummy.
I've been fooled too many times.
Right. And that's exactly the last time it was teddy bears. It sucked. But they were still delicious. Anyway, that little plastic window takes that otherwise recyclable product and makes it very difficult to recycle. And so little touches like that, where it's like, can we just do this with just cardboard? Then it's way easier to put that into a cardboard bale and have a very pure stream of recyclable materials. It's little things like that that can make a huge difference in the downstream thing. And Amazon is actually ahead of the curve where they have these simplified packaging things, and they are using very recyclable materials. Some of the blister packs that they still do use, some of the bubble wrap that they use is not ideal and things like that. All the plastic films, that's not ideal. But in terms of cardboard, they seem to be actually on the ball with this.
What about styrofoam?
It's a great question. So I don't know much about the specifics of this, but by and large, styrofoam is not accepted at recycling facilities.
Yeah, that's the one that's like
Yeah.
I come across a lot, and I'm like, I don't know what to do with this sort of thing.
Yeah. Especially like because we're in film, we buy all these fragile, expensive things that are shipped in styrofoam. And like, I can't tell you how many times I've been like, oh, I bought this thing and now I have like 3 cubic meters of styrofoam packaging and a half cubic meter black garbage bin.
Right.
So over the next 6 weeks, I will be cutting this into small pieces and sort of filtering it into my trash to get rid of it. Right. And obviously it's just a huge waste because it's, there may be a chemical way to recycle it, but most recycling facilities don't take it.
Right.
I think, again, it comes down to packaging. Can we find a better alternative for this? Are there things that we can do that are recycling? Can we make a PET plastic thing that can fit that shape and hold it in place and recycle that? So I think that there's a lot of, it's not just, hey, let's sort the things we have. It's also maybe don't make the most wasteful thing imaginable.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. Back to AMP for a quick second in terms of how do they sell this thing? Like they've invented this robot. There's recycling facilities that have it. It's not everywhere.
Right.
How does this get into more facilities?
Yeah. So they sell these to recycling companies. So chances are your trash is picked up by a company run by like Waste Management, where they hire out the trucks, they bring it in, they sort it out, and then they sell those commodities. Your local government may have a contract with them, and that's how it all gets sorted. But that's usually a private company. That private company is hiring people to sort through the trash and is trying to find ways to make the way they do this more affordable so that they can sustain a profit. Essentially right now, because there is such a labor shortage, not a lot of people are lining up to sort garbage. That it's becoming easier and easier to make the sell that instead of hiring a person for an hourly wage, you could buy this machine outright and have a service contract that would essentially replace one or two people on that line that would be sorting it. So they're working with these waste management companies to implement these devices.
Does AMP have any competitors?
We couldn't find any.
Interesting.
When we were looking through, nothing that was on the market at this scale. There are a few other people who are doing similar work in terms of training machine learning systems to recognize trash and recycling. So we definitely saw that. There's definitely a lot of robotics implementations out there, but we felt like this was the one that we found that had the biggest scalable operation and was out to market with this kind of footprint.
So how many bank statements did you find out here in the recycling
People
pit?
do not shred their bank statements. Well, look who failed their math test. Also, Sharon, please shred your bank statements. That is weird. Yeah. I was stunned by that. There's so much stuff.
Okay. So social security numbers, what have you stolen?
Yeah, I mean, it was actually kind of fun going through. Tim, who gave us the tour, was like, yeah, we get all kinds of things. We get like, you can tell when there's been like tests at school because we get like a bunch of like math tests all at once.
That's funny.
Yeah. So someone sees that stuff. If you were ever under the impression that this was like, that the recycling bin was anonymous and it just sort of like was swallowed up by machines that never noticed. No, people see it. People see all that
You're
stuff.
out there. You're out
I
there
saw that stuff.
looking through their stuff.
There was some weird shit in there. Some weird like photos that were printed out. And
Did you keep anything? Any keepsakes?
no, I didn't keep anything from the recycling facility. I can't imagine why I would want something.
I don't know. Someone might have thrown out some Legos, you know? Would you let that go to waste?
No one throws out Legos, Tim. Don't be stupid. No, I didn't take anything.
Okay.
So, yeah, it wasn't a clean place. It's very dusty and dirty.
But smells great.
It's not entirely unpleasant. It's not entirely unpleasant.
So who are the people that started this? Like, why has this become your passion area? Like, how do you pick up someone at a bar telling them that you specialize in?
It's not a problem I have.
Okay.
Well, if they like the way you smell.
Right. Of course. Do you like that earthy, whiny, musky smell? Yeah. It's because I was just at a recycling facility all day. The reason I care about this is because I want to live in space. And
Didn't see that one coming.
serious.
I can't wait to launch you to orbit.
Yeah. And I also recognize that the challenges to get humans to a moon base, a Mars base, to living in orbit or to colonize other planets are enormous. And one of the big ones is how we handle our waste.
5 pounds a day.
It's bananas.
It's crazy. It's a lot.
And there's no way we can even start to do that until we figure out how to do this. Until we figure out how to use things more efficiently, we can't handle that. We're not close to that yet. So I think this is one of those very unsexy problems at some level that is super essential to the really cool futures that we want to build for ourselves. But astronauts on Mars are not going to be able to just run through trash. They're going to have to reuse everything. And we're just not good at that yet. And so if we can get better at that, that'll make things better for all our subsequent generations. So that's probably the most encapsulated reason as to why I think this is important.
And what about like the CEO and the people that
Yeah, so Dr. Matanya Horowitz was the founder and CEO of AMPS, and he describes seeing a landfill and just being infuriated. And I've had the same experience where it's just stunning how much is just thrown away, and totally good stuff that could absolutely be melted down and reused again in some way, in some shape or form. And it's tragic. It's heartbreaking to see all that. It's a massive, huge problem. And this is one of those areas where AI combined with some interaction with the physical world can just immediately have a benefit. So I think it was sort of an audacious problem to tackle. It's not the most obvious or sexy one, like I said, but it is one where you can start to see an immediate impact and real good. And what's funny is we also have done episodes with people using AI and robotics in other areas, and they also were inspired by the idea of how can we sort out trash? How can we do that? They wound up taking their robots in a different direction, but it's a similar cause for concern. Team sees the effort that Mr. Beast and some of these other YouTube stars have led on. If you watch their videos, Mark Rober has a great episode where he's with a robot that sorts out trash from rivers that's floating on the surface.
I actually do have one other teammate who just so happens to be a floating 50-ton trash-eating robot. We got some eggs, looks like a Go-Gurt. Oh, what do we got here? This is a cola reel. Come on, man, this isn't even open.
These are big problems. And, in a developed country with a robust waste disposal infrastructure, we don't notice it. But go to places where they don't have that, and you start to see the piles of trash on riverbanks and on the coast. It's really depressing.
Yeah.
And we have to get better at this. And I think we can with very minimal effort once we start to embrace these technologies and let them mature.
And also say if you have a less pure motive, I've heard it said that if you want to make a lot of money, pick a job that nobody wants to do and do it.
How do we get rich?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, if no one wants to deal with trash, it's like we want to just be able to throw it away.
Yeah.
And so if you can actually make that problem go away, people will pay you to do that, whether it's governments or individuals or whatever.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm curious about like the algorithm itself, like the AI that they've sort of made here. What are they doing with like, it's all the different AMP models are sort of feeding into this bigger thing. And so we're going to have like this intelligent trash AI.
Our intelligent AI trash overlord?
Yeah. But I'm like, are they doing anything with that? Because it seems like an interesting data set.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're primarily refining that over time to just get better and better at sorting trash. Mm-hmm. I think the end use case for that is better and better sorting machines. Mm-hmm. The better we can get at that, the more pure waste streams we can have and the better recycling we can have. A lot of what happens right now is we get fairly contaminated sources, we'll melt them down into a lower grade of plastic, and that gets worse and worse. But if you can be really refined in sorting out exactly this type of chemistry with this type of chemistry and this, et cetera, then you can basically preserve that quality over time.
I'm thinking about the TSA Instagram account where they have like all the ridiculous things that people tried to sneak through airport security, and I'm just
forgot.
Yeah, it was one time.
And I do wonder like what are the most ridiculous things people have tried to recycle, but it probably doesn't get onto the conveyor belt.
Yeah, usually I'm sure that's sorted out before that, But yeah, actually, one of the fun things at the San Francisco transfer station is they have an artist in residence program for the recycling center, and so there's someone who's going through and finding creative ways to make beautiful objects out of otherwise discarded materials, and it's really fun. So it's well worth a checking out if you're in San Francisco.
You tried to fool the AMP robot, and it didn't seem like you were successful.
Actually, what we're going to do right now is just a little experiment to see if the AI that powers these robots can distinguish between a plastic bottle and a picture of a plastic bottle. My money, I think we could trick this robot.
It was not successful. I tried to fool the AMP robot by putting in photos of plastic bottles alongside real plastic bottles to see if it would, and often just on its own to see if it would trigger it, and it could tell that it wasn't the real plastic bottle.
What does fool it though?
So far, I haven't been able to fool the robot, but I'm going to try again.
Is there a rematch in order?
I'm down. I'm down for a rematch. I think it would be possible if with a better representation of the bottle in that environment. Because when I took a photo of the plastic bottle, it was on a white background and the conveyor belt was black. So I wonder if switching that out might have been better. But I couldn't.
Stupid human.
I know. Well, yeah, exactly. Well, was I actually smart? It's not whether or not it can be fooled. It's whether or not I was smart enough to fool it.
Exactly.
Right? So
exactly.
It passed the test in that regard. So with a round two, I'm always down to try. So because it's not using like laser scanning 3D software. There's no LiDAR involved here. This is an RGB camera that's taking images of the trash stream and picking out what it sees as trash. So it should be relatively possible to fool that.
But if you have, let's say, a plastic bottle and a glass bottle that are identical in terms of their shape, how does it tell what's plastic and what's glass?
That's a great question. I mean, plastic and glass have different refractive properties to a certain extent, so I'm sure that there's that as well. Machine vision doesn't look at the world the same way we do, so I'm sure that there's some differences there. There's also subtle clues about like the cap and what's on it versus the glass is usually thicker than and has just more refraction going on than plastic, which can be pretty thin. So I'm sure there's subtle clues like that. But by and large, it seems pretty robust in terms of how it does. And the waste streams that they've been getting are far more pure than what they were getting before. Certainly at Napa, that's how they described it to us.
In terms of proliferation, what happens when they're proliferating this all over the world and different places have different kinds of trash? And so what happens in terms of just like the AI model that might not really know what different trash looks like different places?
Yeah, that's not allowed, Taylor. So there are, as you say, like different products, and they're trying to even be product specific, where it's like, oh, this type of detergent bottle has this thing, so they can identify that. So they can be very specific with these sorts of things. And I think, to your point, as they enter new markets, they're going to encounter, totally different packaging, different brands, different looks of things. But it doesn't take long for these things to be learned. It doesn't take a whole lot of exposure to these new sources of information for these machine learning algorithms to pick it up. And once it does, that algorithm gets populated out to all of these robots. So when one robot, say in, Europe winds up learning a different type of, mayonnaise container, that populates out to all the robots in North America. So if that comes through a waste center there, then that gets done.
It's a cool hive mind.
Yeah, exactly. It is the Borg for trash.
It's pretty fun to think about it in terms of like if they took the same approach to the computer vision system that Tesla is taking to the autopilot system, where it's like, oh, this same AI can be put into a humanoid form factor, and solve different problems. Like, what if you put this trash algorithm in as like a download for your like Rosie the robot thing, and it solves your own?
Yeah. Can you take this and put it on a robot that rows around the beach and picks up trash?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I actually had a question in the comments about like, this is all fun and games until they use it for crime scenes. And I was like, what do you do in your spare time?
Exactly. Wow. Someone's trying to get rid of a dead body.
Yeah. Dexter AI.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I think I do love the idea that like you would just take it to Canada where there's milk in bags and it would just explode. What I really want the AI art to get advanced enough that it can go and pick the most interesting artwork objects,
right,
and put that artist in residence out of a job.
There we go.
It's only a matter of time.
Yeah. What was it like? I think my favorite part of the video is you in a trash can.
Thanks for the ride.
That's true.
What was that like? Did you enjoy it? Feel comforting?
Nothing about that was comfortable. It was well north of 100 degrees that day. It was very hot out there. Napa County is not known for being like a cool, breezy place in the middle of the summer. It was very warm. And when we were doing research for this, we were thinking, we got to work Oscar the Grouch into this somehow. Can we do Nick the Grouch in a trash can? And we even brought a metal trash can, and I was going to pop out of that to say hello. And then I discovered I don't fit in a metal trash can.
You're not the size of a puppet?
I guess I had forgotten how small metal trash cans were. Or the last time I encountered a metal trash can was when I was a small child. And I could easily fit in that.
Yes.
And that mental picture just never got updated in my head. So Lucas Abel, who's actually the editor on the piece, also came out because he doesn't live that far. So he helped us film it, and he brought this trash can, and I was immediately like, Lucas, I've wasted your time. I cannot cram myself into this. But luckily, we were at a recycling center, and they happened to have a lot of trash cans. Cleaner.
Did they give you a new one, or were you there?
It was not new, but it was clean. It was they actually, one of the things they do at the center is when your trash bin gets soiled and it is no longer in great shape.
Right.
They bring it back and then they recycle it or clean it. And so this was a freshly cleaned one. They had hosed it out, pressure washed it, I believe.
Yummy.
And it was, I wouldn't say food safe, but I wouldn't eat anything out of it.
Of course.
But it was fine being inside it for a little bit. It was fine. It's all right. These are the things I do.
So what comments did people have?
Glad you asked that. They actually had a lot of questions, mostly about technical details. So one question was, how do they tell the plastic types apart?
A lot of it is just memory. So if you know that this Tide bottle is made of this kind of plastic and it's seen that Tide bottle 30,000 times, then it knows where to sort it. So there's that. It's not doing any kind of like spectrometer analysis of these things to see what it is. It just knows that, this milk jug is this kind of plastic. This plastic bottle is a number one plastic. This Gatorade bottle is a number one plastic. And it can sort things out like that. Paper is paper, et cetera. So it's really just identifying from memory what is what.
So there are a number of people who had questions about like, why doesn't plastic just have a barcode on it that tells them how to sort it, or RFID or something? But it's probably because of that, because it's always in a different configuration. It can be soiled, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, and a lot of plastic is marked to tell you how to sort it and recycle it. So conceivably, this robot could see the number 2 symbol and know that that's that kind of plastic and sort it into the right bin. May not be able to see that, and that's where it has to be smart about how it's identifying these objects in the stream.
I'm curious to like have it just put on the conveyor belt a bunch of like hot dogs and sandwiches and be like, is the hot dog a sandwich? Like, how does it?
Is this a sandwich or is it a taco? Yeah, I'm curious to see how AI solves the cube rule. I'm sure someone's done this.
I don't know, actually.
Is it cube theory? Is that the term? I can't remember. Yeah, is a hot dog a sandwich is a perennial question that even AI has not been able to answer correctly.
I'll ask ChatGPT after this.
We should do that. Why isn't that in the AI special?
So we had a number of questions that were also about like different approaches to tackling the same problem. People suggested like, why don't houses have handheld scanners that can scan things so you can sort it easier? And then people saying like, I worked in a recycling plant and we had an air pusher machine that did some similar things like that sorted out.
Yeah, the amount of devices they have there for sorting things is incredible. We were only able to show really this, but they have all these machines that use different types of currents of electricity. Some as magnets to attract the ferrous metals that are magnetically charged, and other types of machines to push out the non-ferrous metals. And they have all sorts of things that blow up the lighter material like paper and cardboard. It's pretty amazing how sophisticated they already are at sorting all these things into different streams. And the robots are sort of at the tail end of that. After all the sort of easy mechanical sorting has been done, you have this stream of stuff that's just not easily identified by these other processes. So that's where it has to kind of manually go in and sort through stuff.
That makes sense.
It's cool.
So we had some questions about the technical specs. It mentions 80 items per minute in the video. Where are they now and how does that scale? If you have like this is a smaller plant, I assume, like in Napa, but if you have like, a New York City of trash or something like that, do you need a lot of different machines? Can you make this go faster? How does it work?
Yeah, it scales very easily just by adding more machines to the belt. And what's nice is it's a very linear process already. It's just a conveyor belt. So you could just add a couple more of these machines and you can have it sort through the tail ends of whatever it misses. Or you can actually just have it run through it again. So you can take the dumpster that this is all going into, bring it back and run it through the conveyor belt again to get additional passes. So those are the two easiest way to scale this sort of process. And clearly for larger facilities, you'd need more of these types of machines to have it work efficiently. But it does seem to scale pretty much linearly. You can just buy more machines and get more pure output.
Cool. That's all the questions I had.
Any mean comments?
Anything mean?
No nasty comments?
Yeah.
I don't know if this is a mean comment, but I think it's one of my favorite ones. It's, wait, why am I not just sorting my own recycling? It's so much easier to break it down anyway. So basically, I can just start my own business where people can drop off the recycling to me, and I can sort them and sell them at wholesale back to other local businesses.
Yes, you can do that.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
It's called starting a recycling facility.
That's where we were.
We just filmed that. But yeah, please do. Like, we need more people doing this sort of thing. Yeah. Absolutely.
It's a great comment.
That's all.
All right. Well, thank you all for having this discussion. I really enjoyed it. And for everyone who's watching or listening, if you have any comments or questions, make sure you leave those below and check out the next episode of the Hard Reset podcast.